Welcome to the Hope's Harvest Rhode Island 2021 Volunteer Orientation. Thank you so much for your interest in gleaning with Hope's Harvest Rhode Island. Remember that attendance and viewing of this orientation is required for gleaning with Hope's Harvest Rhode Island in 2021. You will need to take a quiz after this video to be approved to glean with us, as well as a few other steps to be a fully registered and approved volunteer. Make sure to pay attention and feel free to rewatch this video or parts of the video to familiarize yourself with our volunteer guidelines. And check for follow-up links to quizzes and forms on our registration page and in the video description. First, Hope's Harvest wants to acknowledge that we operate on the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Narragansett, Nipmuc, Niantics, Wampanoag, and Manasian Indigenous peoples. This stolen land was cared for and called home by many more Indigenous tribes from time immemorial, now since gone. Native peoples then and now cultivated the land and animals in symbiosis, living in partnership with the natural world in a fundamentally sustainable way that we could learn much from as we suffer from the effects of an industrialized global food system. Now, more than ever, Indigenous communities are suffering the effects of food insecurity, a byproduct of a colonialist state which has limited their access to traditional resources and knowledge that have been cultivated for thousands of years. Increased access to quality food, self-determination, and food sovereignty for these communities has never been more important, and Hope's Harvest Rhode Island is committed to showing up in partnership with Indigenous leaders who are taking a stand today, as they always have, for the earth and their traditional relationship with the land and the abundance it provides. We'd like to introduce you to the members of our 2021 Hope's Harvest staff so you know everyone's faces and names when you join us out in the field. We have 2 permanent full-time year-round staff. Ava, myself, the program director, and Molly Rose, our operations manager. Many of you are familiar with Merle, our outstanding AmeriCorps Vista. They will be staying with us through December this year, and we're also happy to welcome our new AmeriCorps Direct Service member, Sarah Sundstrom, who will be with us through December as well. Deanne is new and will be joining us from June through August as a summer AmeriCorps. We'll also be hiring one additional team member to serve as our full year Vista, and we'll make sure to share out their information when we bring them on. Our team works tirelessly in all conditions, heat, wind, rain, and snow, to get healthy food into the hands of our neighbors, and we're so grateful to them for the huge difference they make in their community. So let's get into it. We at Hope's Harvest believe it's important to provide a primer for everyone who works with us on why we do what we do. As volunteers, we want you to know the broader context of the issues we're working to address, and how you fit into that bigger picture when you come out and glean with us. Some of you may have already seen this information in other presentations, but we invite you to revisit it, as there's always more to learn, and we've added some additional information for this orientation. So let's start by talking about hunger in Rhode Island. In a 2020 status report conducted by the Rhode Island Community Food Bank on hunger in Rhode Island and published in November of 2020, it was found that 1 in 4 households in Rhode Island lack access to adequate food. This is the highest level of food insecurity recorded in Rhode Island in 20 years. Hunger in Rhode Island has always been an issue, but it has been exacerbated by COVID-19. Here, you'll see the potential for increased need due to COVID-19. People who will be hit the hardest are those who are already struggling due to unemployment and poverty, as well as children and seniors. This research also found that many people likely to see increased food insecurity are service workers and people working care professions like childcare. While we are starting to see improvements, a setback like the one we've had over the past year will have effects on people's food security for years to come. Food security also disproportionately affects Black, Indigenous, and people of color, non-white individuals, due to systemic and structural racism, which encompasses a host of issues, including unequal access to jobs and housing, discrimination by banks or government agencies, underfunded public schools, racist policing fueling the incarceration crisis, lack of voting rights or access in Black and Brown communities, and on and on. You can see the stark contrast in how many white versus non-white people are food insecure in this diagram published by Feeding America's Food Insecurity and Poverty in the U.S. 2020 and 2021 Impact Report, published in March 2021. So, when we're thinking about addressing food insecurity, we're stepping into a space where many people's basic needs are not being met, and we're taking on one small piece of that work. At the same time that millions of people across the country are going without healthy, fresh food, we're also seeing research that shows a huge amount of produce going to waste on farms. You can see here that food wasted on farms accounts for about 20% of the total food waste in the United States, 17 million tons, and about $14 billion in lost revenue for farmers. So why does this happen? Well, farmers aren't doing anything wrong. They're often growing more than they need to make sure they have enough for their markets in the case of bad weather, pests, or disease pressure, and to account for ugly produce or produce that's too big or too small for packaging. And farmers run on tight margins and often can't afford to pay their workers to harvest food that isn't going to be sold. Again, there's nothing wrong with that, but rather than see edible food on farms getting brought to the compost pile or fed to farm animals, we want to make sure that it's going to its highest and best use. And if it can feed people, we're able to get it there. So, how do we address these issues? Well, Hope's Harvest mission is to improve the livelihoods of local farmers, increase food security for Rhode Island's most vulnerable residents, and get everyone engaged in strengthening the food system by eliminating on-farm food waste in Rhode Island. How do we do this? Well, we rescue surplus food from hardworking farmers and we deliver it to hunger relief agencies across the state, bringing high-quality fruits and vegetables to children, seniors, and working families in our communities who lack access to nutritious foods. This process is not a new model, but it has been happening for thousands of years. Farm-based food recovery, also known as gleaning, is the ancient practice of collecting unharvested produce from farmers' fields and distributing it to people in need. In modern times, the farmer lets us know when they have product available in the field. We recruit and manage volunteers to go out and harvest it. And then, as we said, we bring it to hunger relief agencies across Rhode Island, and they in turn distribute it to people in need. At Hope's Harvest, we have three main stakeholder groups that we work with. First, we work very closely with farmers across Rhode Island and also southeastern Massachusetts. This list here includes all the farms we've worked with in the past, many of whom will also be partnering with again this season. Most of these farms are in Rhode Island, but again, we work with some farmers in southeastern Massachusetts. We also work with a number of hunger relief agencies, ranging from the Olneyville Food Center right next door to us in Providence, down to the Johnny Cake Peacedale and University of Rhode Island and Johnny Cake Westerly in the southern parts of the state. We attempt to geographically spread out the Glean bounty to as many hunger relief organizations as we can, and this year we're hoping to serve an even broader range of agency types doing truly heroic work, keeping their communities healthy and well-fed. Last, and certainly not least, you are volunteers. You all are essential in making sure that this project works and that we can increase the value of all of our time and effort by coming together to harvest food. Every volunteer really dramatically increases the amount of food that we're able to recover and distribute, making a huge difference. We've been blessed to have a lot of steady and consistent volunteers who've worked with us for years and new recruits every year who join us and fall in love with the sunshine, the earth, and the good we're able to do out in the fields. People often ask where we get our funding and support. Hope's Harvest Rhode Island is fiscally sponsored by Farm Fresh Rhode Island, and we operate out of their brand new food hub in the Valley neighborhood of Providence. We also receive private grants from foundations, including the Rhode Island Foundation. We contract with the Rhode Island Community Food Bank, and we also have some business sponsors, including the Newport Restaurant Group and the Harbor One Foundation. We also get individual donations from our supporters. So if you're not able to volunteer with us, or even if you are, know that there are many ways to give to this work to ensure we have the resources we need to keep getting trucks on the road and delivering food. So far, since 2018, Hope's Harvest has been able to recruit over 600 volunteers who have collectively spent over 2,800 hours harvesting approximately 400,000 pounds of fresh, healthy local fruits and vegetables from about 25 farms across Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts, which has been distributed to about 27 hunger relief agencies serving over 10,000 unique individuals per month. We've recovered exponentially more food from year to year since 2018, starting at 36,000 pounds, then 80,000 in 2019, and 275,000 pounds last year. We obviously couldn't have done that again without all the hard work of our farm and agency partners and volunteers like yourself. So thank you. So that's enough about us. Let's talk about being a gleaner with Hope's Harvest Rhode Island. We get so much positive feedback from volunteers about how much they love gleaning with us out in the fields. Fresh air, being in nature, getting exercise, meeting other volunteers, learning about agriculture and the different farms we work with, and most importantly, making a difference for people in need. You're already here, so you probably already know about these benefits, but we want you to know that we see ourselves as an organization that provides a great experience and great value to our volunteers. And we're here to make sure you get everything you want out of your time with us. Let's get into the details of how it works. Gleaning with Hope's Harvest Rhode Island is a two-part process. First is registering as a volunteer, and second is signing up for trips. All our registration forms and requirements are available on our website on our volunteer page. The first thing you need to do is watch the orientation video, yes, this one, which again, the link for that is available on our volunteer page. Congratulations, you're almost done with step one. Step 2 is our post-orientation quiz, also available as a link on our volunteer page and in the description for this video. You'll be asked questions based on this video that you're watching, so be sure to pay attention thoroughly. You will need a 75%, 6 of 8 questions correct or higher to be an approved volunteer. You can access both the video and the slides on our volunteer page for your reference. We also ask that you read our media waiver, our liability waiver, volunteer agreement, and COVID-19 waivers, all available on our volunteer page. Our media and liability waivers and the volunteer agreement have not changed this year. So if you've already read them, you're good to go. Please reread the COVID-19 waiver to review our updated policies and make sure to check all the boxes for these in the registration form when you complete that. And if you're new, please make sure to review all of these documents thoroughly. Step 4 is to complete the registration form at the bottom of our volunteer page. This step confirms your agreement to the media liability volunteer agreement and COVID-19 waivers. When you complete this, you will automatically be signed up to receive weekly email notifications of upcoming trips. If you've already completed this form, you should do it again to make sure you're renewing your agreement to our updated COVID policies. It's also a good way to update your information in our system if your address, email address, phone number, etc. have changed. Note that the only required questions on this form are the first name, last name, and email address. So if everything else is the same, feel free to skip those questions and just complete the top 3 fields and the checkboxes at the bottom. Congratulations! If you passed the quiz with a 75% or higher and have read and agreed to all the waivers, you're now a registered and approved volunteer. Part 2 is signing up for trips. So now we'll go on to how to do that once you've registered. Event invitations are sent out to our email list on a weekly basis. Volunteers click on the link to sign up for specific trips based on your availability. We collect basic information such as your name, your email, and your phone number if we need to contact you during trips. For every trip, you must sign that you agree to the volunteer agreement, the COVID-19 agreement, the media waiver, the liability waiver, and confirm that you have watched the orientation video and completed the post-orientation quiz. You will receive information about farm location in the trip confirmation after signing up for an individual trip on Eventbrite, where you will then join Hope's Harvest, Rhode Island, and other volunteers on that trip at that farm for 1 to 3 hours. Hope's Harvest, Rhode Island staff provides safety and harvest training at these trips. Event invitations are sent out via email on a weekly basis, sometimes more during the peak season, usually between Friday afternoon and Saturday mornings. We don't always know exactly when these will go out because we're often finalizing trip details right up until we send out the invitations. Trips can fill up fast. We're working on various options to address this, including having more trips and potentially offering trips just for new volunteers. So don't give up and keep checking back. Volunteers click on the link to sign up for specific trips based on your availability. When you click on the link in our email, you will be sent to sign up for your trip on Eventbrite. Again, we collect basic information such as your name, email, and phone number, and you must agree to all of the agreements. You will receive information about the farm location directions and any special equipment or trip details in an emailed trip confirmation after signing up for individual trips on Eventbrite. Sometimes these can go into spam inboxes, and sometimes the trip directions get cut off at the bottom of the email. Make sure to click on the 3 dots at the bottom of your email if this happens to see the full trip information. Please do not bring friends unless they have already signed up using the above process. We promise farmers that we won't put them at risk of liability, and the sign-up process is how we protect them and keep our relationships with the farms so they keep working with us. Finally, join Hope's Harvest and other volunteers on your trip. You arrive at the designated start time and location to meet our staff, and they will be identifiable by a bright orange bandana or Hope's Harvest Rhode Island hat. Hope's Harvest Rhode Island staff provides safety and harvest training 10 minutes before the start of each trip. We do have hand washing stations, and you will be required to wash your hands before you begin gleaning, but we cannot guarantee accessible restrooms, so please consider that in advance. New this year, we are requesting all volunteers wear a bright orange Hope's Harvest Rhode Island bandana so our farm partners can identify our volunteers easily from a distance. You can bring your own, or we'll have them available on trips. We just ask that if we've provided you with one, you hold onto it and remember to bring it with you on future trips. Hope's Harvest Rhode Island is dedicated to providing our friends, families, and neighbors in need with fresh, healthy food, and we take our responsibility to the people we serve very seriously. That includes the farmers and their staff, agencies, and everyone who receives our food, and you, our volunteers. For that reason, we are complying with CDC guidelines around mask wearing and COVID-19 guidelines. Moving forward for the 2021 gleaning season, you must be masked on gleaning trips unless you are a child under the age of 2, actively consuming a food or beverage at least 3 feet away from others, developmentally unable to wear a mask, fully vaccinated, which means that you are at least 2 weeks out from your last dose, indoors and able to maintain a 3-foot distance, or outdoors and able to maintain a 3-foot distance. You can read the full CDC guidelines for fully vaccinated people at the link that we've provided here. There are some caveats to these guidelines. We are still asking that you keep your mask on your person and available during a gleaning trip at all times, even if you're not wearing it, in case the need arises for us to mask up to meet the safety or policy needs of any of our partners. Although we are changing our guidelines at Hope's Harvest, the farms and businesses that we visit may ask us to comply with their guidelines. Additionally, screening requirements are still in effect. You cannot attend a gleaning trip if you're experiencing symptoms, quarantining, etc. These screening requirements detailed in our COVID safety agreement are for the health and safety of our team members, volunteers, and those who receive food from Hope's Harvest. All indoor trips, sorting and packing, will be mask required, and volunteers will still not be allowed in our trucks. We're also taking requests for masked trips. If you know that you want to glean with us but can't attend a trip with unmasked people for whatever reason, you can request a masked trip and remain anonymous. We will make sure that everyone signing up and attending that trip knows it's a mask required trip. Please email Molly Rose at mollyrose@hopesharvest.org if you're interested in this option. Thank you for your understanding. If we need to update policies over the course of the season, we will make sure to keep all volunteers informed of changes. We want to review the COVID-19 screening requirements. If you answer yes to any of these, we ask that you refrain from joining us on a trip until it is safe for you to do so. In the last 10 days, if you have traveled outside the United States to a hotspot, unless you're fully vaccinated, been in close contact with someone who tested positive for COVID-19, you've been within 6 feet of someone with COVID-19 for a total of 15 minutes or more in a 24-hour period, unless you're fully vaccinated, or if you're currently experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and or have in the past 14 days experienced symptoms of COVID-19, and that's whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated. Please keep these screening questions in mind and answer honestly when considering attending a gleaning trip for the safety of your fellow gleaners, Hope's Harvest staff, our farm and agency stakeholders, and most importantly, the people in need who are receiving the produce we glean. In summary, here are the precautions we're requiring from our volunteers this season. Registering to be a volunteer by watching this volunteer orientation video, completing the quiz, and agreeing to the COVID-19 volunteer agreements. Additionally, we're asking that you go through our pre-screening questions during trip signups and monitor for symptoms on site. At this time, our volunteers must be 16 years or older to sign up. We ask that you always bring a personal face mask, fully covering nose and mouth, to the trip, as well as your water bottle, personal supplies, gloves, hand sanitizer, sunscreen, etc., because we are still not providing water due to COVID-19. While on site, we require our on-site guidelines for volunteers, which includes safety procedure review at the beginning of each trip, hand washing required, and our station will be provided for that, social distancing of 3 feet in the field and loading the truck. Our staff will manage and monitor this. We will still not be allowing volunteers in Hope's Harvest vehicles or other Gleaners vehicles. We will not be sharing equipment, and packing and bunching will be done in the field, not in the truck. If volunteers are not able to follow proper safety protocol, they may be asked to leave. As always, you can find an extensive list of what to bring on a trip on our volunteer information page. In closing, we know our volunteers are dedicated, community-minded, and thoughtful individuals who also care deeply about the health and well-being of our fellow Gleaners. And so we expect and require that everyone who attends will follow our policies for the season. If you're not able to for any reason, please know that we value your contributions and look forward to gleaning with you again when you're able to join us out in the fields. If you have any questions about this video, registration, or sign-up process, we'll be having a live question and answer session on June 9th from 6 to 7 p.m. to answer all of your questions. You can fill out our Q&A Google form as well before coming if you so choose, or you can show up during that time or just fill out the Google form and provide us with your email address and we will send you a response. Here's some references for where we came up with guidance for these policies, and you're welcome to view those and review and find out any additional information there if you need them. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for participating in this training. And we really look forward to seeing you out in the fields. For updated information, you can also follow us on Facebook at Hope's Harvest, on Instagram at Hope's Harvest Rhode Island. Or if you have questions, comments, or feedback, please always feel free to email us at info@hopesharvest.org.